You have been told that caffeine blocks autophagy, that it spikes your cortisol, activates your stress response, and shuts down cellular cleanup, that switching to decaf is the safer, smarter choice. That is not just incomplete, that is backwards. And today I'm going to show you exactly why. Right now, there is a good chance you are making one of 3 mistakes with your morning coffee. The first, you are adding sugar, honey, or a flavored creamer. And within 4 minutes of that first sip, your body has already shut down every autophagy pathway your coffee just opened. The second, you switch to decaf because someone told you caffeine was the problem. And in doing so, you may have accidentally upgraded your autophagy potential by up to 100%. The third, you are using a dark roast, and the primary autophagy compound in coffee has already been destroyed during the roasting process before it ever reaches your cup. In this video, I am revealing the complete coffee autophagy protocol, the 2 independent biological mechanisms your coffee activates every single morning, the 1 ingredient that shuts both of them down in under 4 minutes, and exactly how to drink coffee to trigger cellular cleanup before you eat a single calorie. If you watched our 8 foods video, coffee was food number 7. Today, we go 3 layers deeper. Stay with me. Now, I want to address something directly. In the comments of our last video, one of you raised a legitimate challenge. Caffeine raises cortisol. Cortisol activates your stress response, and therefore coffee must be blocking autophagy. That reasoning sounds airtight. Here is why it is not. Yes, caffeine temporarily raises cortisol. That is real. But the cortisol response peaks within 30 minutes and returns to baseline within 2 to 3 hours in most regular coffee drinkers. In fact, research shows that people who drink coffee consistently develop a significant tolerance to its cortisol effect, particularly in the morning hours. What caffeine does at the same time is more important. The moment caffeine enters your bloodstream, it triggers the release of calcium ions from inside your cells. Those calcium ions activate an enzyme called CaMKKβ, which then phosphorylates AMPK at a specific site called threonine 172. Once AMPK is active at that site, it directly suppresses mTOR complex 1 and opens the autophagy program. Here is the critical comparison. The cortisol response peaks at 30 minutes and fades. The AMPK activation begins within 15 minutes and lasts 4 to 6 hours. The autophagy window opens faster than the cortisol window closes. Your net result, if you stay under 4 cups per day, is strongly positive. Here is where the science becomes genuinely surprising. When coffee goes through the decaffeination process, the caffeine molecules are removed. But there is a second compound inside every coffee bean that most people have never heard of. And it does something completely different from caffeine inside your cells. That compound is chlorogenic acid. Here is the detail that changes everything. Caffeine and chlorogenic acid compete for the same physical space inside the coffee bean. When caffeine is removed during decaffeination, chlorogenic acid no longer has competition. The result, decaffeinated coffee contains 50 to 100% more chlorogenic acid than regular coffee made from the same beans. You did not lose an autophagy trigger when you switched to decaf. You traded one trigger for a larger dose of a different one. Here is what chlorogenic acid actually does. It blocks mTOR from phosphorylating, a transcription factor called TFEB, at the serine 142 site. When that phosphorylation is blocked, TFEB moves directly from the cytoplasm into the cell nucleus, where it switches on the entire lysosomal biogenesis program, building new lysosomes and new autophagosomes simultaneously across every cell it reaches. Caffeine fires from one direction, chlorogenic acid fires from another. Regular coffee delivers both. Decaf delivers more of one. Neither is inferior. They're different biological weapons aimed at the same cellular target. Now let me show you exactly where these two mechanisms are confirmed in the published literature. A 2020 study published in Drug Design, Development and Therapy confirmed that chlorogenic acid alleviates autophagy impairment, specifically through the mTOR and TFEB signaling pathway. The researchers measured the phosphorylation ratio of mTOR directly. Every group that received chlorogenic acid showed a statistically significant reduction in that ratio, and TFEB nuclear translocation was confirmed across all treatment groups. A 2014 study published in PMC, Skeletal Muscle, confirmed that caffeine promotes autophagy in an AMPK-dependent manner. When researchers used a CaMKKβ inhibitor to block the calcium pathway, the autophagy marker LC3B2 was completely abolished. Remove CaMKKβ. Autophagy disappears. That is not correlation, that is mechanism. Two independent studies. Two independent compounds. Two independent biological pathways. Both pointing to the same cellular outcome. But before I show you how each weapon works in detail, I need to tell you about the one thing that shuts both of them down simultaneously. In under 4 minutes, stay with me. Let us start with the first weapon, chlorogenic acid. Every cup of coffee contains a polyphenol compound called chlorogenic acid at measurable, biologically active levels. The moment it enters your bloodstream, it travels to a critical protein called mTOR, specifically to a phosphorylation site at serine 2448. It blocks mTOR from activating at that site. Here is why that matters. One of mTOR's jobs is to keep a transcription factor called TFEB locked outside your cell's nucleus by tagging it with a phosphate group at serine 142. When chlorogenic acid blocks mTOR from doing that job, TFEB loses its phosphate tag. And a dephosphorylated TFEB does only one thing: it moves directly into the nucleus. Once inside the nucleus, TFEB switches on what researchers call the CLEAR gene network, a coordinated program of over 400 genes responsible for building new lysosomes and new autophagosomes simultaneously, not repairing the ones you have, building entirely new ones. If you watched our 8 Foods video, you already know this TFEB pathway. Extra virgin olive oil activates it through oleuropein and oleocanthal. Two completely different foods. One shared cellular destination. And when you combine them, they arrive through different roads and do not compete. The second weapon is caffeine, and here is the precise mechanism your doctor has never described. The moment caffeine enters your cells, it triggers a release of calcium ions from a structure inside the cell called the endoplasmic reticulum. Those calcium ions activate an enzyme called CaMKKβ, which is the same enzyme activated by EGCG in green tea. CaMKKβ then phosphorylates AMPK at a site called threonine 172, the same energy sensing switch. Once AMPK is active at that site, two things happen simultaneously. First, AMPK suppresses mTOR complex 1 from the energy sensing direction. Second, AMPK directly phosphorylates a protein called ULK1, which is the initiating kinase of the autophagy complex itself, the protein that physically assembles the autophagosome membrane from the very first step. If you remember berberine from video 3, this will sound familiar. Berberine activates AMPK at the exact same threonine 172 site. The mechanism is different. The molecular address is identical. Your morning coffee is doing what the most studied natural metabolic compound in current research does, every single day. But here is the problem. There's one ingredient that shuts both weapons down simultaneously, in under 4 minutes of contact. And billions of people add it to their coffee every morning without realizing what it costs them. Now here is the problem that shuts down both weapons simultaneously. When you add sugar to your coffee, Glucose enters your bloodstream within seconds. Your pancreas detects that spike and releases insulin. And insulin activates a signaling cascade that leads directly back to mTOR. Insulin activates PI3K, which activates AKT, which phosphorylates and silences a protein called TSC2. When TSC2 is silenced, a switch called RHEB fires, and mTOR complex 1 comes back online completely. When mTOR reactivates, it does two things immediately. It expels TFEB from the nucleus, shutting down the lysosomal construction program chlorogenic acid just initiated. And it phosphorylates ULK1 at an inhibitory site, disassembling the autophagy initiation complex that caffeine just assembled. Both weapons disabled. 1 teaspoon of sugar. 4 minutes. Think of it this way. Your black coffee is the ignition. Sugar is the emergency brake. The engine is running. Nothing moves. Now here is what most people ask next. What about artificial sweeteners? The answer depends on which one. Sucralose has shown ERK pathway activation in cell studies, which raises questions about insulin signaling under habitual use. The data is not conclusive, but if your goal is maximum autophagy, the uncertainty alone is reason enough to avoid it. Stevia and erythritol show minimal to no insulin response in human trials and are considered neutral by current research. But the simplest, safest, most effective answer remains the same: black coffee, no sweetener of any kind, zero interference, maximum biological effect. Phase 1 is simple. 3 things leave your coffee permanently. First, sugar and sweeteners with insulin response, for the reason you now understand completely. 4 minutes to full mTOR reactivation. Both weapons disabled before they can do their work. Second, milk and cream. This one surprises most people. Dairy contains whey protein, and whey protein is dense in an amino acid called leucine. Leucine is one of the most potent direct activators of mTOR in the known food supply, operating through a completely separate pathway called RAG-GTPase. You do not need an insulin spike to reactivate mTOR. A single gram of leucine in your bloodstream is enough. Your latte is signaling growth and storage before you have taken the second sip. Third, dark roast. A published analysis found that light roast coffee contains nearly 9 times more chlorogenic acid than the same bean roasted to dark. Up to 90% of your primary autophagy compound is destroyed during the extended roasting process. You are buying the smell of coffee, not the biology of it. Strip all 3 out. Black coffee, light to medium roast. That is phase 1 complete. Phase 2 is about maximizing what you already have. First, choose your roast deliberately. Light to medium roast preserves up to 9 times more chlorogenic acid than dark roast. The darker the bean, the better the aroma, and the less autophagy biology remains in your cup if you are drinking coffee for cellular benefits. Light roast is not optional. It is the entire point. Second, understand the regular versus decaf decision. A landmark 2014 study published in PMC confirmed that both regular coffee and decaffeinated coffee trigger autophagy in vivo. Measured directly by LC3 lipidation and P62 degradation, the 2 gold standard markers, regular coffee activates AMPK more aggressively in the short term. Decaf suppresses mTORC1 at equivalent levels through chlorogenic acid alone. Choose based on what you are optimizing for. Maximum AMPK activation, regular. Maximum chlorogenic acid delivery, decaf light roast, both are valid. Neither is inferior. Third, time your coffee inside your fasting window. During a fasting state, your AMPK is already elevated, because insulin is low and energy reserves are depleted. When caffeine and chlorogenic acid arrive at that moment, they are not starting from zero. They are stacking on top of an existing AMPK signal. The combined effect is significantly greater than the same coffee consumed 90 minutes after a meal, when you must first wait for insulin to return to baseline before either compound can function. Fasted coffee, light to medium roast, black. Phase 3 is where individual compounds become a system. Coffee and matcha both activate CaMKKβ. Do not consume them simultaneously. Space them by at least 2 to 3 hours. This allows the enzyme to reset between activations and deliver full effect each time. Coffee at 7 in the morning, matcha at 10. 2 complete activations, not one diluted one. Coffee and turmeric work through completely different cellular targets. Chlorogenic acid drives TFEB into the nucleus to build new recycling infrastructure. Curcumin activates Beclin-1, the architect of the autophagosome membrane itself. These pathways do not compete. They operate on separate parts of the same assembly line. Add a half teaspoon of turmeric and a pinch of black pepper directly to your black coffee. The piperine in black pepper increases curcumin bioavailability by up to 2,000%. You are not changing your coffee. You are adding a second biological system to the same cup. Coffee and berberine fire into AMPK from 2 separate upstream directions simultaneously. Caffeine arrives through the calcium pathway. Berberine arrives through the cellular energy stress pathway. Both land at the same phosphorylation site. The combined signal is additive. Consume berberine-rich foods with your first meal, immediately after your fasted coffee window closes. The master morning stack looks like this. Black light roast coffee at 7. 1 tablespoon of extra virgin olive oil immediately after. Matcha at 10. 3 independent autophagy triggers, firing within a 3-hour window, before a single calorie of food has entered your system. Before you leave, I want to address the cortisol concern one final time, directly and completely. Caffeine does raise cortisol, that is confirmed. But in regular coffee drinkers, the research consistently shows that this cortisol response is significantly blunted compared to non-habitual consumers. The spike peaks within 30 to 45 minutes and returns to baseline within 2 to 3 hours. The AMPK activation caffeine triggers begins within 15 minutes and sustains for 4 to 6 hours. The autophagy window is open longer than the cortisol disruption lasts. You are net positive, but that calculation only holds below a specific threshold. Research places the safe and effective range at 2 to 4 cups per day. Above 5 cups, prolonged cortisol elevation begins to work against the same pathways you are trying to activate. Stay within the range. The biology works in your favor. Your morning coffee was never the problem. The problem was what you added to it, and what you did not know it was silently doing for you every single day. Comment coffee stack below with how many cups you drink every morning. And if you have not watched the 8 Foods Autophagy video yet, it is on your screen right now. Everything in this video builds directly on what is in that one.